Awesome. Thank you so much. This is fantastic that you guys are able to join me this afternoon. So let me share my screen. So give me one moment. Let me go ahead and get that up and prepared for you. And I'll get that in presentation mode and we'll go ahead and get started. Again, I want to remind you, May 1st, June 2nd, take a picture of this. We want you to be prepared and excited. Parents, students, you can do it. It's all about growth this year, and we just want you to have a lot of practice there. But grade 6 through 8, of course, our testing day, it's just one day. Students have up to 120 minutes, so definitely keep that in mind. And this is when we talk about that FAST, that progress monitoring, right? And remember that PM1 and PM2, it was just given for that informational purposes. So that PM1 was that baseline test, and that provided the teachers with that starting point. It did test all the entire year skills, right? And then PM2 was that check to monitor any progress. Now, PM3 is going to be that complete summative. It's still adaptive, but it's the end of the year, and that is what measures the students for mastery. So with the Algebra 1 and geometry, it is one day for that testing, but I put a little asterisk there because I want you to keep in mind you are able to test for at least for the algebra and geometry. If you need that additional time, a student may continue to work up to the length of the typical school day. So I always tell the algebra geometry students, don't rush through it. If you really need that to check your work and you need that time to go back and just really look at some problems, you can work up until the length of that typical school day. But this is a good thing. I know in previous years, the state assessments, they were given in 2 days, but this has been changed here. And again, I'll give you some information where you can go and look online to see where this is located so that you can look at. The FAST results that you're going to receive, they're going to be communicated by these performance levels. It goes from level 1 through level 5. And as you can see, a level 1, and you're really beginning to access the content, just not very close to that on grade level expectation of what is needed. Level 2 is demonstrating below satisfactory level. And then at level 3, of course, which is typically our proficiency, we definitely want kids to get to at least level 3, right? They're demonstrating they have that on grade level success with the content. And obviously level 4 is above satisfactory. And then if, of course, you get to level 5, that's the mastery. You're demonstrating mastery of that content there. Now, this test design summary, as we look at these, your teachers have these, and this is so very important. So to give you an example, if I am looking at Algebra 1 or geometry, these test design tells me there's a certain percentage of the test in which they're going to cover these particular benchmarks. So your students may be like, if we look at Algebra 1, there are really 3 areas, right? You have one area that's nonlinear, another area that's linear, and then some other areas that deals with the expressions and data and those things there. Some of your students are very, very strong in maybe linear equations. Some of the students are just learning nonlinear and they're just needing more practice with it, maybe able to master it by the end of the year. But here, the teachers, they work and we create these curriculum guides where your teachers are able to ensure that you have mastery by the end of the year of these particular benchmarks. And so this is the item coverage that students will have and what they will be tested on. When you get your reporting categories, these are the categories that you will see your students' performance on. I do want to remind you of the calculator and reference sheets policy. This is so very important. Students, if your teachers are not providing you with the reference sheet right now, it is okay to ask your teachers, hey, Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, do you mind if I have a copy of the reference sheet so that maybe I can reference it as I am doing some of my practice work or I'm working on certain things. So reference sheets are provided containing, certain conversions, certain formulas that'll be important for students. I do want you to keep in mind, you can use a calculator. There's not a separation of section 1 and section 2. So you can use a calculator that whole test. I am just going to say this for parents and students. The object of using a calculator is making sure you understand when to use that calculator and using it efficiently. If we are subtracting, we're doing 5 minus 2, we don't need a calculator for that. I want you to use that thinking, and I want you to make sure that you're thinking about how to do that and what strategy you're going to do. But for many of our problems, right, we will need a calculator, and that's when you want to pull out that calculator and know how to use it. So if you're not using a calculator right now, please make sure you understand how to use the calculator so that when you get to the test, it is not something that is new for you when you're testing. So an example of the scientific calculator for Algebra 1 and geometry, as well as 7th and 8th grade. And then we have another for function that can be used for our 6th grade. And this is new for 6th grade. 6th grade typically could not use calculators. So this is a little bit different. But keep this in mind about the use of the calculator. I want you to start practicing right now. Let's not wait until that test to say, oh, wow, I have a calculator, I can use it. Nope, let's figure out how to use it efficiently. The next thing, we talked about this a little bit, parents that have 10th, 11th, 12th graders that are still needing that graduation requirement for our Algebra 1 end of course. If they have not passed that Algebra 1 best end of course, they can always look at that PSAT score. This is a score that you need to have, the SAT math, the ACT math, or those best end of course for algebra or geometry. PERT, and that is probably, I think everyone has graduated who was taking PERT. It still has to be on the state document, but PERT is not available any longer as a concordant score. But keep that in mind, PSAT, SAT, ACT, or that best end of course in order to satisfy that graduation requirement. So very important. We did talk about that. Now I want to go to the important part, item types. And this is where parents, students, I need you to practice. I want you to think about, what are you going to do when you get a problem that you see, and these tests are online, right? So these are the item types that you can have. So math item types include all of the following. So as we go through some examples, this is an example of a multiple choice item type. And so when I look at this type of questions, students, and you're most familiar with this, but you're going to choose one correct answer from the options below the question. And this item, it just allows you to choose just the one answer. But students, I want you to take a picture of this, take some pointers from me. When you are solving these problems, please solve the problems before looking at the answer choices. I want you to see if you can think through it. I don't want the answer choices to make you think, oh, I think I know it. I want you to solve that problem first before looking at those answer choices. And then, if necessary, when you look at those answer choices, prove that the other choices are wrong before selecting the answer. And I know it's an online test, but if you have this on paper, if this is number 4 and you have A, B, C, D, for instance, you can write, A, oh no, that's false, or you can, scratch it out. So that's a strategy that can help you out. But immediately mark through any choices you 100% know are wrong. So if you know that 360 degrees is the only highest amount that can go in a circle, if you see 550 degrees, you know for a fact that is incorrect. Automatically make sure that that's not part of your choice. Another one you can have multi-select, and the students are just directed to select all of the correct answers from the number of options. And these are quite different from multiple choice items, which allow you to select one. But with these, you're going to go through the same process, solve that problem or answer the question before you look at those choices, because I need you to get through that thinking process first, right? And then remember that more than one answer will be correct. So a lot of our students get this incorrect because sometimes they only select one answer. Or sometimes the answer may be 3 answers and they just select 2. So remember, read all of these answer choices and make sure you know if it's true or false. All right. And this is just a 7th grade example. Here's an editing task, an Algebra 1 example. And this type requires you to click the blanks, and you're going to reveal a drop down. And here's a good thing with a lot of the item types. We have some practice with our core textbook. Students are able to do this with our core and supplemental programs that we are providing as instruction in the classroom. So that's a good thing. But with this drop-down menu, it contains those options to complete an equation or an expression or a statement or some type of component. So you're going to select that correct response from that drop-down menu. Notice there's two drop-down menus here. If you just get the first one drop down to answer it, you got to make sure you go to that second one, right? So make sure you read that sentence or statement and think about it. And I keep saying thinking, but think about what might go in the blank before you even click to see the choices, okay? Then we have selectable hot text. Just kind of give you a fifth grade example, because I got these from the practice test. We didn't have one readily available for algebra or any of our middle. But with the selectable hot text, the student, you're directed to click on one or more correct answers from among a number of options. And so what happens is when a student, they hover over that option, the text will highlight, and that indicates the text is selectable. And in other words, hot, right? So the options may be presented in various ways, and the student could just click on it and select it, in other words. So just keep that in mind. You don't get too many of these, but there are options, and they're there, and you could see them. Another one is equation editor. And so here you enter a number, a variable, an expression. It could be an equation, but it's as appropriate to that test item. What does that question stem, ask you? And you're going to respond appropriately to the response box. Now, you're going to be presented with a toolbar, and it includes a variety of these mathematical symbols that can be used to create a response. And from that box, it's separate from the text. So you got to make sure you pay attention to that, but be able to practice this in your class. We have these software, the same type of Desmo calculator, for instance, built into our McGraw-Hill, into our Savvas. So be able to practice how to use the calculator online, or this equation editor, I like to say, how to input the values online. That's going to be so very important. We also have matching. And so for matching, you'll check a box to indicate whether the information from a column header matches information from a row. So the number of those correct answer options per row or column, they may vary. So don't just think if you had X-intercept and you chose one number, it was just one answer. X-intercept, and if you're learning about this in class, you're dealing with quadratics. If you're in algebra, you should know with quadratics, you can have two different X-intercepts, right? So just make sure you practice this type of question. And then our seventh grade, this is new. Most people think gridded response is like a grid and you throw it in there. It is not. So I want to make sure I clarify on our graphic response item display. You will use a point, a line, an arrow, some type of tool to create a response on a graph. And the item type may also require you to select numbers or words or phrases or images, sometimes in a drag and drop type of feature. So you'll be completing this by dragging or dropping numbers or statements to a correct place. The only thing I could just remind you with this one, please read the directions very carefully. Just read those directions and make sure you even read them more than once if needed, because they're going to direct you to do a certain action on a graph. All right, let me stop right here and see if we have any questions. All right, so I see a question here in the chat. It's a great question. When can they practice using the calculator? So you can start right now. You can start right now using that calculator. And in fact, if you're back in the classroom with your teacher, when you're able to log in, or you can log on with the parent at home, right? Log into through blended learning to your core curriculum, which for algebra, and geometry, McGraw-Hill, and for 6th through 8th grade is Savvas. When you log on, look for those tools, look for those online tools and look for that calculator, you definitely can use it and navigate it right now. Parents, if you haven't purchased a calculator and you want your child to practice on the TI-30, you're welcome to do that as well. But the ask that I would say to each of you is just make sure you know how and when to use that calculator. For the sixth grade test, you have the same item types, right? The calculator is different though. You're going to have that 4-function calculator. But very important that you still get practice, because I know, again, sixth graders, they didn't have the use of calculators, so it potentially could be something that is new for students this year. But most students coming from from elementary, they typically know how to do grade scratch paper, so they don't really depend on that calculator as much. But yes, and I will tell you where to get your practice test from, the same items that I had here, and you can go by grade level and or course. All right, so as we look at FAST resources, so if you don't have your cameras out or pencil to write this down, please make sure that you write down some very, very important information. So the first thing is Florida Department of Education has released resources to help our teachers, to help our students, and our families, right? All stakeholders in preparing for this new progress monitoring as well as the end of course. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through how to access some of the materials that are currently available for you. Once you land on flfast.org, so that's the place that you would go. You go to flfast.org. You will click on Florida Assessment of Student Thinking, and it'll be right there in the front. You'll be able to see it right there. And so once you click on that, the next thing that you would do, you would click on Students and Families. And so, and I probably click pretty quickly, but just so you see how that looks a little bit there, but you click on those students and families. Once you click on students and families, you'll be able to come to a page that looks like this. This is where you're able to access the sample item types for any of our 6 through 8, as well as our algebra and geometry practice tests. So very important. So parents, if you're listening, please have your children to log on and take this practice test, right? Students, if you're listening, please log on and take this practice test. It will just kind of help you to navigate all of the item types we talked about, and just really give you that experience of what you're able to see. Okay, so very important that you look at that. But you'll be able to see that sample there, and you just click right where it says take a sample test for grades 3 through 10. Once you click on that, by choosing that sample test, you'll enter a practice site, and you will click sign in at the bottom, and then you'll be prompted for the grade level that you want to practice. So after choosing the grade level, you'll enter that test. And so it's so very important that you just kind of at least 1 time, 2 times if you want to. The question doesn't change, but go through and practice. So very important. All right, so also at the very bottom where we had clicked on that sample test, you'll see additional Florida Department best assessment resources, and that just has information about the FAST. I will tell you to explore it when you have an opportunity, parents. I'm just going to look at and highlight just a couple of some quick pieces that's located within that particular section. And when we select, for instance, the fact sheet, so we look at that grade 3 through 10 fact sheet, there's some important information that you'll see, some of what I shared with you a little bit earlier. But this tells you for PM1 and PM2 and PM3, you know, how many minutes your students may have had for it, what to expect, right, on that test there. Of course, they're longer for this last administration here because we want students to take their time, and we want them to be able to show us the mastery as they're getting through their test there. Don't forget, your students are familiar with it, but the FAST assessments, they're delivered using the test delivery system, and that's a secure browser. So really the whole entire state of Florida, they're on this browser, right? So at times, sometimes it goes down. The kids, the last time it went down, they were very, very patient. I think Microsoft had an update, but the kids were great, the schools were great, so we were still able to get on and do what was needed. And the results of the assessment, of course, they're also available for all of our families in the family portal. So I'm gonna talk about that really quick. So if we look at our, let me just keep going forward. Oh, that's what I want to get to. So when we look at the family portal, your access code, you can ask your school for it, but I'll tell you exactly where it's located. So when you log into your Focus account, parents, if you go into that area where you can look at your student state testing results, at the very, very top, there's going to be an access code. It's a little six, it's digits and letters, but you'll see just those 6 characters at the top, and that's your access code. And you will need that along with your student's date of birth and first name in order to gather that report. Now, you could do that and or reach out to your guidance team. Of course, they're always the closest to your students, so they know exactly how your students are performing, but that is available for you in the family portal. All right, and again, once you log into the family portal, once you're there, you'll be able to get some of the information for each of the testing sessions, as well as to see your child's performance level. And that will detail for you what their growth was, from PM1 to PM2, and or for our students that's just taking algebra and geometry. Obviously, you won't get those scores. You only have one administration, right, in May, but you'll be able to get your scores after that test is administered. All right, so if you are still on that the Florida Department of Education resource site, if you click on either that before or after testing at the very bottom, so now I'm in that kind of third section on that page, you will find some information about some of the reporting, that the report generations, the reporting, I guess, that your students will receive in order to learn more about how you can read reports yourself, just to identify what you should understand as a parent. So very important to go into that section as well. And I know I'm giving you a lot of information, so just kind of bear with me. All right, so we have explored some of the state resources. I'm going to take you back to Duval County Public Schools resources, because you can really start here if you would like to access your students' data by going to duvalschools.org, of course. And then when you click on the students and family, that is also another way in order to access information for your child. So as you can see, it's right there at the very top. Once you click on that, you're going to select that Performance Matters parent portal from the links that's over there on the list there. You can kind of see it there on the left. And once you click that, you're able to pull up information about your student as well from there. So that's so very important. So regardless if you want to go to the state site to get directly that FAST information, or if you want to come here and get it from Performance Matters, or if you can go to Focus, you're welcome to get it from there. But plenty of places in order to discover what your current performance is for your student, and or how to assist them in having the knowledge of what their next steps are. All right, so I talked enough. So we all want to help your students be successful. These are some ways just to support your students at home. Grades 6 through 8, they're going to have that access to Study Island. They're going to have access to Savvas. Algebra 1 and geometry. They have access to their core content, which is McGraw-Hill, as well as have access to Khan Academy. So there are plenty of opportunities in order for students to practice and to improve and grow their skills in understanding the important on grade level and at sometimes below grade level if they needed to, or even accelerated beyond that. But there are plenty of opportunities within our blended learning platform, as well as the practice material that their teachers may provide them. So it's so very important that we are collectively working as a team to make sure that our students are continuing to grow. So last thing I'll tell you, don't forget, please involve your child in everyday mathematics. So very important. Just having a general conversation a lot of times will help students with sharing their thinking and continuing a conversation. That's how they begin to build. That's how they begin to connect. That's how they begin to enrich what they're learning. So continue to involve them and ask them about what they did in their day. I think you'll find some great things that your students are doing in the classroom. And so I've talked enough, and I definitely want to thank you again for joining us on behalf of Academic Services in partnership with Parent Academy. We appreciate the time that you have spent with us today, learning all about FAST and BEST end of course. But have a great evening, and thank you so much for your time.